just want to first introduce myself. My name is Andrew. I am from Dorkaholics, where we believe there is a dork in everyone, and it is our responsibility to bring that dork out to the world.
I love it. I love it. Let's dork out.
So first, I just want to say I really enjoyed this documentary, especially being a basketball enthusiast myself, and of course, being a fan of Stephen Curry. There were a lot of things I never knew about his journey in Davidson College. So I wanted to know during this documentary, what was like one of your favorite new facts that you kind of learned about him during this production?
Favorite new fact? I think I did not know. Well, there's a bunch of things that were fascinating. I didn't understand that he had never been recruited by any like D1 college. That was surprising, including Virginia Tech, where both his parents went, including Del Curry, who's a legendary NBA player, was really surprising. I didn't know that they never retired his number at Davidson, because if you haven't graduated from Davidson, they won't retire your number. And he was the only player under the tutelage of Coach McKill who had not graduated. And so I didn't realize that he was sort of carrying that with him, and that was ultimately became part of the narrative, that he was finally trying to fulfill his promise, to his mom to graduate, but that he would love to have his number hung at Davidson. So those are a couple.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, one of my favorite scenes was that climactic, like, finish at the end during Steph's journey, especially with the final game with Kansas. It felt as if like fate could have changed that night, even though we knew how it was going to end. I just wanted to know, can you elaborate more on how you were able to kind of create that scene in particular from like the filmmaking perspective?
Yeah, a lot of it came from the emotion, the unexpected emotion of what made that emotional. And if you think about it, just simply in terms of like sports or an athletic context, it's like either you make the shot or you don't, and ultimately Steph didn't take that shot. Jay Rich took the shot, just like many of us take shots in life, and for many of us the shot doesn't go in, and that's a very unifying and universal idea, and that's part of what we wanted to try to do with this movie, is make a film that's sort of transcends the sports film. But it was also a moment of transition for these young men. It was the last time that they were going to be playing together. This particular team, playing together as a team, and so that's what we were sort of building up to that moment as well. Not just are they going to win or lose, like that this is a transition for these young men going off into life. Some of whom are going to go on to the NBA, like Steph. Most of whom, are not. And so that was really the idea in terms of how to cut the scene. And JD used that slow mo kind of. It's probably painful for them to watch that. I don't think that they've ever. I don't think Steph's ever watched that moment with such clarity and focus before. I think he said that he had never actually watched it. Maybe he had seen it, like seen the shot miss, but he had never sat and sort of watched the footage. So that was it was nerve-wracking for us to have the responsibility of representing that moment, which was a difficult moment for them.
And I know that your previous projects were more about notably exploring like the narratives of like healthcare and criminal justice and the education system in Oakland, which was incredible, by the way. And I just
Thank
want to
you.
know what was like the difference in the approach of working on this documentary about Stephen Curry, and like where what would how would you compare that experience?
I mean, in some ways, radically different in the sense that I tend not to have, you know, I don't have any on-camera sit-down interviews in my film. The waiting room did utilize some voiceover, but the Force and Homeroom did not. And so, in that sense, it was a departure. But in a lot of ways, there were a lot of similarities thematically. My films are very much about community and family and the power of community to sort of transcend challenges and overcome obstacles, and that was very much what this movie was about. It was about a young man very much like the city of Oakland, who was overlooked, wasn't seen, wasn't validated, except by, his inner circle and this very special person, Coach McKillop, who became his mentor, and about the power of that sort of community to sort of overcome. And so I don't think that was evident to me right away, but as we were editing the film and it was sort of coming together, I started seeing more and more similarities to kind of my body of work. It's just that it's through the lens, of a celebrity basketball player as opposed to, an extraordinary, an extraordinary person who's more ordinary than you think, rather than ordinary people who are extraordinary, which is sort of like, what Homeroom and The Force and The Waiting Room are about.
So what kind of brought you to want to do this documentary in the first place?
I've been making films in the Bay Area for many, many years, and my dream was to make a film about the A's, set in the stands of the Coliseum, kind of similar to The Waiting Room, which was this film about this remarkably diverse community bound together by shared experience. I wanted to make a film about set in the stands. Because anytime I go to like A's games, I'm like, oh man, this is like beautiful, like all different types of people, different ages, classes, gender identities, background, socioeconomic, everything come together and have conversations and share story, have friendships. So I knew I wanted to do something in the sports realm in the Bay Area, but not sure what. And that movie never came into fruition for a variety of reasons. But along the way, I befriended Ryan Coogler. We he started a company which I joined a few years ago, and him and Steph had struck up a friendship because he's such a hardcore Warriors fan. And when it became time for Steph to realize that he wanted to make this movie, which the seed was that he was finally, he had tried to graduate, fulfill his degree requirements back in 2011 during the NBA lockout, but he couldn't do it. And that the year before, he said to himself, I'm going to do it this year, and I'm going to make this film about my time at Davidson. So he approached Ryan, and I run Ryan's nonfiction department, and Ryan was like, I could make the movie, but Pete does documentaries. You want him to make it. So me and Steph met, and I talked to him about my style, my philosophy of storytelling, what I think makes an impactful movie, and we talked about access. We talked about the need to spend time with him and his family, and we came to an agreement, and we were off and running.
One of my last questions is, during this process of meeting with Steph and everything, was there any kind of like, not disagreements per se, but was there things that you wanted to make it into the cut, but then he didn't agree, or anything vice versa?
Not really. I think we were on the same page for the most part. I am always trying to get access to everything, and so the one thing that actually I wanted access to, which we couldn't get, was over at the Chase Center, like in the locker room as the season was unfolding. I wanted a little bit more access into that world. And Steve Kerr didn't really want that because it was a distraction for the team. But the more we learned about Steph, and Steph never really articulated this directly, but he didn't want it to be about him, because the team is so important. And ultimately, what we were learning as the process unfolded for us was that it wasn't just a film about Steph Curry. It was a film about Coach McKillop. It was a film about Jay Rich. It was a film about the '08 Davidson Wildcat basketball team, and it was also a film about the community of Davidson College. And so those realizations, we were all kind of aligned with that. We interviewed a lot of people that didn't make it into the film: Allen Iverson, Muggsy Bogues, Jeff Van Gundy. The people who made it in the film, like Reggie Miller, made it in because he was organically connected. He was there during the three-point record. He was filming the scene on his phone, like a fan, even though he was calling the game. He himself had been a three-point champion. So we were always looking for those organic touch points. And Stefan and his partner Eric Payton at Unanimous Media, were great in terms of recognizing that what you might typically see in a sports documentary is like getting a bunch of famous people to talk about how great Steph Curry is, that wasn't going to make the best film. And so we were lucky to have, partners that who understood and sort of vibrated on our kind of freak, because we're documentary nerds and we have, or dorks, we have very strong feelings about what makes, authentic film. And, we also recognize that these days there's so many films about celebrities coming out that you have to really understand, what beyond the celebrity, what makes this interesting? Why should I care? Why am I going to spend, 2 hours of my life, watching this movie?
Thank you so much, Peter, for taking the time out to talk to me today. Um, I just want to congratulate you on this project and everything. And it was just a pleasure to watch. And I definitely agree with all your points. That was very evident in the documentary. And I can't wait for the world to see it very soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your having me on or interviewing me.
Thank you so much.
This isn't a show, right? It's not video.
No, it's just a kind of online website kind of thing.
Online. Okay, I can't wait to read your piece.